Your Technology Tutor Program, Episode 11. Today's topic, Common Fundamentals of Video Technology.
Welcome to the Your Technology Tutor Program, where you'll learn how to be more successful using personal technologies like Mac computers, iPhones and iPads, useful software, cool web tools, videotaping and editing, digital photography, and more. And now, here's the host of our program, Your Technology Tutor, Chet Davis.
Well, hello and welcome to today's program. So pleased to have you along with me as together we learn to be more successful in our use of personal technology. Today's topic is a hot topic. Well, I'd like to think every episode is a hot topic, but really, more and more people are using video nowadays than ever before. And I think there's two primary reasons. One, I think video cameras are more available than ever before. Just like digital still cameras, there are lots of very affordable digital video cameras. A number of years ago, you had to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on video cameras, and you still can, but you can also get a decent video camera for under $100, under a couple $100. That'll even shoot HD video, and we're going to talk about what that really is. And then, many smartphones today can shoot good and even very good, close to great video. And with the proliferation of sharing content, more folks are shooting and sharing videos. Smaller, what I call snippets, but they're still shooting a lot of video for their vacations, for family memories, etc. The second reason I think we're seeing a surge in video is the fact that we're seeing this great sharing of video using video over IP, over Internet Protocol, sharing on the Internet. Business, small business, local business, and big corporate business, they're all moving, many of them, to capitalize on the fact that Internet-delivered video is becoming a valuable tool for marketing and sales, as well as customer support and other business functions. Training of your employees, new hires and existing employees. There's a lot of great opportunities to use video, and we're seeing it being used more and more. And it's a very effective tool. This is coming from a guy who, been doing video for about 40 years now. Now, so in today's episode, then, I'm going to explain some of what I consider to be the fundamentals of video technology. The topics I'm going to share with you today are based on some of the most common questions I receive and have received in the past, and also just kind of did some research on the internet and said, hey, what are some of the most common questions people have about video technology? And as I planned out this program, I realized that I'm going to end up splitting kind of the topic of video over this episode and the next one, over two episodes. Today's topic is primarily around, the foundations, the fundamentals of video, and some of the specifics that will help you in terms of recording, of setting the right settings in your camera and your camcorder, and even to kind of help you get an understanding. So if you're maybe thinking about purchasing a new camcorder, you'll be aware of some of what the manufacturers talk about in terms of the specifications. But I have a special program coming up later this month that's going to be just on shopping for a new camera, but I digress. So again, today's topic really, the foundations of digital video. Now, I have to say that I am providing information at what I would call a novice, or, in some ways maybe an intermediate level. This is not designed to be for a full-time professional video producer who's well steeped in the industry. This isn't going to be groundbreaking stuff for you. This is for what I call the common person, the everyday John and Judy, the people that are maybe they're comfortable pushing the buttons, but they'd like to learn more about how their video camera works, what it is, and what are the right settings, what are the best settings. So to that end, I will provide just enough information to make sense of a topic, along with a summary, what I'm calling the takeaway to know about a topic, to try to make it as digestible as possible without having to take antacids. All right. So first of all, let's start with a very, very basic, and at the risk of sounding condescending. Now, here's my style. If you've listened to my podcast before, you already know that. This is how I am as a teacher. As an expert technology teacher, I know people are at all different kinds of levels. Some people, they've read books and they could probably deliver a lecture on some of this stuff. Other people it's all Greek to me. And they're not familiar with any of it. It's my belief that even if you have a pretty good sense of something, it benefits you to maybe have a deeper understanding. Maybe you'll hear it differently or hear something new or slightly different, and you'll be richer for that. All right? So first of all, what is video? Well, oversimplified, video is an electronic representation of something that's going on, a visual recording, something that's moving typically, though it doesn't have to be. It can be something that's static and still. And oftentimes video, it comes with audio, which is the electronic representation of sound. So video is not what's happening outside my window as I look out to the right here and see this beautiful tree blooming and blowing in the breeze. That's not video. When I capture it using electronic technology, then it becomes video. And when I play it back on a display, on a projector, on my computer monitor, on my HD TV screen down in the living room, then it's video. Now, video is captured by the use of a video camera. We call them video cameras more nowadays. There was a while we called them camcorders. Now, you may know that camcorder is a contraction between camera and recorder. So it was more than just a camera, because the camera captures the image, whereas the recorder saves the image. And today's cameras do both. Now, again, a camera can run anywhere from just around $100 US to tens of thousands of dollars. And again, I'm not, this episode, pretty much none of what I do on Your Technology Tutor is designed for the full-time professionals, in Hollywood. There are other folks that address that. I am perfectly comfortable and happy to help out those folks in what I call the everyday genre. Now, what I want to do is break it down, because if you're thinking about a camera and understanding some of what we're talking about in terms of technology foundations, video foundations, we need to understand, really oversimplified, today's cameras are divided into like 3 different parts, okay? You have the lens, then what we call the pickup element, and some kind of a storage device. The lens, a pickup element, and a storage device. So it's the lens's job to take the light and focus that light, which is your subject, your image, into the pickup element. And it's the job of the pickup element inside the video camera that is what we call in electronics, in science, and physics, a transducer. Say that with me. Transducer. Good. And the transducer changes one kind of energy to a different kind of energy. So a transducer in a video camera, what we call the pickup element, changes light energy into electrical energy. That electrical energy is then saved. Back in the day, as young people will say now, we used to save that electrical energy on a videotape. Okay? Very few new video cameras save to tape. There are other storage means, primarily internal flash drive. There might be a hard disk drive, which are also less and less frequent. And then a flash media, where you put in an SD card, for example, and it saves it to that device. So, and we're talking about what we call consumer and prosumer. So, this is stuff that you and I can buy at the local electronics supply store. It's not something, again, made for Hollywood, for CNN, the major television networks. They're on a different plane with other needs and other resources. So, those 3 elements, the lens, the pickup element, and then the storage device. Again, so the storage device is, how it's being recorded. And each of these 3, well, the first and the last, the lens is oftentimes adjustable. When we zoom our lens in when we focus our lens so that the image is crisp and clear, the main subject, the primary subject, is clearly seen, we're modifying some part of the lens. Prior to the storage device, after the electronic energy is coming off the pickup element, we have to decide how it's going to be saved. And we're going to talk about that a little bit in terms of resolution, the different settings that give you different benefits depending on how you're recording it, okay? So those are the main components. In my lesson coming up, where I'll talk about, shopping for a new video camera, there's great decisions to be made about the lens and the storage device. Pickup element, pretty much in the affordable price range. You're pretty much always talking about what we call a CMOS chip, CMOS, but we'll talk about that another time. So here's another topic that I think is ripe, and that is that video depends on light. That's sort of an obvious statement, but I think it's so important for those of us who create video to understand, because without light that is reflected off your subject back into the video camera, you would not see that subject. I always used to blow away my students in video class when I said, okay, when you look at me, you're not really seeing me. You're seeing the light that's reflected off of me back into your eye. Much the same way that a video camera is capturing the light that's reflected off of me, and it goes back into the camera, into the pickup element. So you can see that light becomes terribly important, not only in photography, but in video. Light is so very important. Now, if you were just capturing or recording a single image, by the way, it wouldn't be a video camera, right? It'd just be a still camera. But a video camera is different from a digital still camera in that it must capture and save a series of images, a succession of images. When these images are displayed on your TV or your computer screen in rapid succession, it gives us the illusion of motion. This is something called the persistence of vision, by the way. It's like those little flip books you made as a kid, when you did drawings one after the other. Maybe it's a ball bouncing across the screen, or, what I always like to reflect on is way back in time. When I was growing up, we had this, I think they still sell the candy called Cracker Jack. Remember Cracker Jack? It's like, I can't even remember the little song, but it's like peanuts and popcorn and like a caramel coating. And you got this funky little prize wrapped in a paper envelope. Remember that? Well, back in the day, Cracker Jacks gave out good prizes. Nowadays, they're little plastic junky stuff. But I remember getting little flip books, and it's like little drawings. They appeared to move, like the dog running, chasing the ball. That was cool. Okay? That's an example of persistence of vision. A bunch of still images that are displayed, and your eye connects the dots, if you will, and makes motion where there really isn't any. And it can be argued that's exactly what's happening on television. And the video camera is saving subsequent separate frames, still images essentially, but playing them back at a speed that creates a sensation of motion. Now, before we get in depth into the video system, we have to cover a given. Well, it's a given depending on where you live. If you reside in North America, the frequency of the electrical current coming out of your wall socket is what we call 60 hertz, Hz. That's a measurement of the frequency, if you will. It's kind of like the speed the electrical signal moves through the current, through the wires, through the cables, into your electrical components. 60 hertz is a measurement, again, of the electrical wave. It's moving 60 cycles in 1 second period of time. The measurement is 60 hertz. Now, in many European countries and elsewhere around the globe, the electrical current travels at 50 hertz, 50. So we have a difference there, and this will become important, at least relevant, in the next few minutes. I promise. It's not just some abstract thing that I'm throwing out. Now, when you go to set up your video camera, most cameras today have settings that allow you to select from different frame rates and resolutions. Frame rates and resolutions. If you've been around video, or if you've been, flipping through your video camera manual, or you've gone into the menu on your camera and you saw maybe frame rate and resolution, what they might call image settings or movie settings, That's what I want to explain to you right now. I think it's really important. First, we're going to do frame rate, then we'll take a little break and come back with resolution. So frame rate. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, the video camera has to capture enough frames to give us the sensation of motion. Each full capture of the electronic sensor, remember that pickup element that changes light energy to electrical energy? That's what we call a single frame of video. So in video and television, when we say a freeze frame, it's one full image, one full frame that your camera has captured. Now, that frame rate, the speed of each new frame, can be a variable setting. For a long time, it was set based on the electrical current. In North America, when you shot video, in the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, even in the early 2000s, you were shooting 30 frames per second, 30 FPS. 30 full frames of video were captured every second of time. So if you had a freeze frame, it was 1/30th of a second. Now note that the number 30 is divisible from 60, the electrical frequency, so it is tied to that. In Europe, the normal frame rate would be 25 frames per second, which is divisible from 50. Okay, so there's a correlation. That's why I was talking about electrical current. They are tied to the frame rate. Now again, for a long time I said that was the standard. That's all we could do in consumer, family video, even in local business, that kind of stuff, until you went with the big cameras. And this is totally different from the frame rate in film, but that's kind of oozed in here. Here's the wrinkle. To prevent flicker, the early TV engineers divided up that full frame into halves, into what we call a field, an odd field and an even field. So an odd field and an even field together made one full frame of video. You don't have to memorize that. That won't be on any test, but it does pertain to something coming up in a second here. So really, this system of TV we're talking about, we've been using for a long time, is known as 30 interlaced frames. Modern cameras record not only at 30 frames per second, which is actually on the menu for your camera listed as 60i, 60i, because there's two fields for every frame. Remember I said it's called interlaced? That's what 60i is. Interlaced video. Interlaced video. That's 60i. Now, modern cameras also have the ability to record at 30p. So not interlaced, but what we call progressive. So when you see a camera that says 30p or 24p, that's progressive, not interlaced. It's recording each full frame without that interlace. And that comes big into play into internet distribution of video, which we're going to talk about in the next episode of the program. So we have the ability to set our camera for 60i, which is generally speaking the most universal with every kind of editing system. But there's also 30p, there's 24p, and there's even in some of the newer cameras something called 60p, 60 frames per second, progressively recorded. Now, there's a lot that we could go into more, but it goes beyond the scope of what I wanted to cover today, okay? If you have questions, make sure you go ahead and put them in the show notes, which I'm going to give you the website to in a little bit here. But why this is important is if you're going to edit the video, not all editors are compatible with all these formats. Some are. Some have to be converted before importing or recording that video into the software so you can begin your next video masterpiece. So here's the takeaway about frame rates. Make sure you know your video editor, whether it's a standalone system like the Casablanca, or if you're doing software, maybe it's Vegas Studio, Pinnacle, maybe you're using iMovie, Final Cut Pro, whatever you're using, make sure you're aware of the compatible frame rates. Because there's nothing worse than spending minutes or even hours recording this great stuff and find out that you're going to have a headache to edit it later on. All right, that sound means it's time for our cool find. Every program I use this segment to share a cool gadget application or web app that I think is cool and particularly worthy of sharing with you. This week, it's an app for your iPhone, your iPod Touch, or your iPad. This from the folks at Udemy, Udemy, the Academy of You. You'll find them, their website, at udemy.com. Well, what is Udemy? If you're not familiar with it, it's one of the most popular services providing online education courses, which means you can learn stuff via the internet using your computer. So you can sit at home, you can sit in the office, in the library, what have you, and actually take a variety of different classes. There's short classes or classes that have hours and hours of instruction, and most of the classes are video-based modules. Now, as a professional educator, as an expert teacher, I discovered the Udemy platform last summer and really liked it. I liked it so much I learned some things, but I became an instructor. I have several classes already available on Udemy today, and a half dozen more coming over the next few months. For example, right now, I have 2 free classes on Udemy. One's called Tech Basics, Cables and Connectors, and the other is Pandora Internet Radio. Those are both free. I also have 2 premium classes, each with more than 8 hours of quality video lessons. Those 2 courses are titled Mastering Your iPhone, and also there is iPhone Photography Secrets. The cool thing about Udemy App for iOS, which is our cool find for this week, is that you can learn wherever you are. In the bus, on a train, waiting at the post office, the DMV, the doctor's, the dentist's office. You can even download video lessons in advance if you know you'll be away from internet service. Like you're going to go on an airplane, maybe take a long trip, and there's not going to be Wi-Fi, or you're going camping for a week and you don't know if there's going to be Wi-Fi down at the waterfall. You can download modules or video lessons and watch them on the app. Very cool. The app is free, and the courses on Udemy range from free to paid. Most are probably, I would say, in the $20 to $40 range, but some do. They have other courses that charge even more than that maybe have a different kind of focus. You'll find the Udemy app in the App Store, and I'll have a link to the app page in today's program notes, along with links to my classes on Udemy, and today's show notes are found at yourtechnologytutor.com/11. Just the numeral 11. yourtechnologytutor.com/11. All right, Aru, thanks for that little sounder. That concludes this week's Cool Find. If you've got cool find, by the way, let me know. Send me an email message to chat@yourtechnologytutor.com. Let me know if there's an app or a website or some kind of cool technology tool you think other people would enjoy knowing about as well. Okay, we continue back on to what I call foundations or fundamentals of video technology, trying to help you understand video a little bit more so you're more comfortable with the settings and, understanding how to use your video camera and editing and all that. So we just finished talking about frame rate. Let's go to the next step, and the next logical step is something we call resolution. And resolution is not to be confused with solution. The resolution really is, oversimplified, relates directly to the quality or the potential quality of a video. Our next episode, we're going to talk about compression and codec and file formats, and that's the next direct component. After you've you've shot your video on a camera and you've brought it into your editor and you did all the editing, you added the titles and transition effects and cool effects and music and soundtrack and narration, etc., and then you want to share it. Now, that's what our next episode's all about, okay? And that has a direct relation to the image quality. But you got to start. It's the old computer adage. I don't know how many of you have been around, back in the day, we had this thing, with computers. They'd say garbage in equals garbage out. So if you put junk into a computer, you're going to get junk out again. It's like if you got a junky video recording, there is some software out there that will help you clean it up and make it look a little bit better. But it's not going to ever be, knock on wood, it's extremely rare it would end up being great. So we want to start out really good. So here's the thing, resolution. Now, oftentimes resolution is related to the display setting of the TV, the monitor you're watching it on. And that's measured in the width of the display times the height. But it's not in inches or centimeters or feet. this number that talks about the width times the height is expressed in a ratio that represents the number of scan lines, or individual lines, that the electronics scan when they convert the light into electrical energy. Okay, so the more scan lines that a device has, and the more scan lines that a TV will play back, the better the resolution, the image quality. Now, for example, the TV system we've used for 40 plus years in North America in particular is called Standard Definition TV, SD TV. And it has a resolution of 720 by 480. So if I wrote that down, it would be 720 times 480. 720 by 480. That means 720 lines across by 480 lines high. The greater the number of scan lines, the higher the resolution or the image quality of your video. Think of stipple art. You know, when people take dots and they make a bunch of dots on a page to represent an image? When you get up close, it just looks like a bunch of dots. But if you stand back a ways, it looks like maybe the Mona Lisa or, I don't know, some other mountain. So the dots of ink on that page, just like an inkjet printer, they're printed to create a photo, just like in newspapers. The more dots there are, the better the quality of the image. Same thing with video. Now, most common resolution settings used today are SD, which is 720 by 480, and I got a huge bet that if you have a decent to plus, better video camera, it has these variable settings. You can do SD at 720 by 480, or you can do high definition. Now, high definition typically has a couple different settings, usually 1280 by 720, so 1280 lines across by 720 lines tall. And then full HD is considered 1920 by 1080, 1920 lines across by 1080 lines top to bottom. Now there's a newer resolution making inroads with commercial film and video producers, commercial cinema, digital cinema, and it's called 4K, which has 4,096 lines across, 2,160 lines tall. So a great deal more information, but more about that in a minute. So here's the takeaway on resolution, video resolutions. The higher resolution, the better the image quality. If you're shooting an indie film, you generally would shoot or capture with your camera set to a higher resolution. But, and this is an important but, make sure if you're going to be editing that video that you're shooting on your camera, that your current system is compatible and capable of using that resolution. Also be aware you can always shoot, videotape, capture in a higher resolution, and then convert the final product to a lower resolution for various display purposes. All right, the next thing I want to cover here in our video fundamentals are three kind of acronyms or terms. SD, HD, and 4K. Again, SD, HD, and 4K. These abbreviations or acronyms are different ways to describe the resolutions we just talked about. SD is standard definition. Now, SD typically has a resolution of 720 by 480. Now, you can also take an SD video and output lower resolutions. This used to be more common when folks used dial-up modems that took longer to share a video. Now, most folks typically won't go anything lower than 720 by 480. Typically. I know there are some reasons and there are some times, but for the most part, don't go too much lower than that. There are some really inexpensive, what they call pocket cameras, that also do lower resolution files than that. You might see it on sale on the internet, on some website. Hey, buy this, pocket video camera for $39. Well, I always recommend testing that stuff out. If you ever have a question about some technology like that, shoot me an email, put it on the website, yourtechnologytutor.com, put it in the blog. I'm happy to follow up on that kind of stuff because I hate being taken by something that looks better than it is. And chances are, if it looks like garlic and smells like garlic, it probably is, meaning that it's probably a better deal, sounds like a better deal than it really is. Anyway, so SD is standard definition. HD is high definition. Okay, again, there's those two common resolution sizes for high definitions, the 1280 by 720 and the 1920 by 1080. And then we have 4K. 4K because K stands for thousands in the metric system. And 4K typically presents the highest quality cinema projection coming in. That's the resolution that's 4096 by 2160. So 4K refers to the number of pixels across. 4096, 4000 4K. Okay? So really that's all those terms mean. They're just different ways of talking about the resolution. Also, when someone discusses the native resolution of a video, by the way, they're saying, oh, does it edit native HD? Well, they're talking about the original resolution. Because remember, oftentimes you can scale or down-res or modify a resolution even within a player to adjust the video for playback at a lower or different resolution. Lastly, I should mention something called up resolution. Up converting, you've probably seen there's DVD players. We'll play your regular DVDs and will also up convert DVDs to or near HD quality. Well, there are electronics in these devices that enable and allow an SD signal, a lower resolution signal, to be boosted so it will look better on an HD display at the higher HD resolution. So maybe you've got a big screen TV and maybe you're connected to the, the HD premium cable service for watching sports and everything in HD. And you got some old DVDs, some old movies, and you want to see them in their best quality. Well, some of these DVD players will make it look better. But be aware, who is it? Stephen Hawking, somebody once said, there's no such thing as a free lunch in the physical universe. You can't make HD from something that didn't start out as HD. You can make it look better, okay? But there's no way to get it up to the same caliber of video recorded in true HD. Although, again, I've seen a couple of these systems, and they look nice. They do look better than true standard def. Here's the takeaway about these acronyms, abbreviations. They're just another convenient method for talking about a specific or a group of resolutions. Next, we have aspect ratio. Aspect ratio. And the aspect ratio also directly relates to the resolution. It's the mathematical ratio of the frame width times height. For example, when folks talk about 4:3 video, you might have heard that term. Hey, is your video 4:3? I want to include it in my keynote, my PowerPoint presentation. Well, they're usually referring to an SD video that's 4:3. That's the old school. It's closer to a square than the wider rectangle we have in widescreen. Most folks who talk about widescreen video are referring to HD footage, high definition, but you can also have SD footage with a widescreen aspect ratio. Now, traditionally, widescreen aspect ratio is 16:9. When we're doing it on televisions and on video, it's usually 16:9. That's an aspect ratio for HD TV and widescreen SD TV. Why that's important is if you have an older video camera, you may not be interested or have the need to go out and get a brand new spiffy HD flash video camera, tomorrow. But you got this project coming up. If it has the ability, I recommend shooting in widescreen, even if you're going to be SD, because more and more people have widescreen televisions and computer monitors that are capable and expect to play back a widescreen video. So the expectation from most audiences, particularly in North America and across in Europe as well, in what beyond developing nations, really we're talking about widescreen TV. That's the expectation. So it's best to meet the audience's expectation. Now I should say as well that cinema in the theaters is oftentimes a different aspect ratio. Oftentimes that's 21:9. Why this is important is if you're including photos in your video, be aware that common photos can be 4:3, they can be 3:2, they can even be 16:9. So if you're incorporating photos in your presentation, take that into account when you're bringing that into your video. Here's the takeaway. I would say that, we need to be conscious if we're mixing different cameras. If you're mixing photos with your videos, it's easier to keep them consistent if you have that control from the start. If you're using different cameras, different people are helping you out, I would recommend they're all set at the same aspect ratio, like they're all set 16:9. And your photos are going to work most best, if they're shot in the 16:9 aspect ratio. They're going to cover the whole screen. If they're shot in 4:3 or 3:2, then you're going to crop them or adjust them in such a way it's not going to cover the full screen. All right? All right, two more terms related to aspect ratio are pillar box and letterbox. Pillar box and letterbox. These two terms relate directly to a video of one aspect ratio that's being played back on a display or TV that has a different aspect ratio. Now, many of us wrestled with this, and you still might, if you have an older TV, a 4:3 aspect ratio TV, not a widescreen TV, a TV that's been there for 20 or 30 years. If you go to play back a contemporary DVD, most oftentimes you will see black lines, they call a black mat, at the top and bottom of your screen. Again, many of us experienced this for years when watching a Hollywood movie on our TV set at home. That's called letterboxing. And the reason why is the black lines at the top and bottom make sure that the width of the program, the original program in the theater, the movie, the film in the theater, shows up on your TV screen. But because it's wider than that rectangle of 4:3. Now, the reverse has a different name. If you take a 4:3 video, maybe an older video, your family reunion from 20 years ago, and you play it back on a new widescreen TV, you're going to see black mat, in other words, the black bars at the left and right side. We call those pillar boxes because the video fits top to bottom, but it's not as wide as a regular widescreen video. So instead of just leaving nothing there, the TV masks it by putting black lines. Both of these things allow you to retain or keep the original aspect ratio of the video, and that, by the way, is what I prefer. Many contemporary TVs also allow you to stretch the film to fit your TV, which I do not like. Big not. N-O-T, not. It looks like a funhouse mirror. Now, sometimes you can even zoom in for the TV, so you're not showing black lines. Instead, you're just showing the signal, but then usually you're cutting off or cropping part of the original film. All right? So two more concepts here. I know we're running a little later than usually. Usually I like to keep it about 30, 32 minutes, but I want to go on with two last things, and that is what we call the color standards and region codes. All right. So color standards. These are different systems for transmitting and displaying color programs on TVs around the world. And a lot of people, if you've been in North America all your life, you never traveled outside, you never traveled other than domestically, you may not even know this is an issue out there. But it is. This is color standards. People got together in committees years ago and decided, okay, because there were actually different ways of doing television, and they had to get this committee to agree. Okay, in this country, we're all going to use System X or System Y. And that's the system that everybody who makes a TV for the United States or for Canada or for Brazil or for France, we all use that same thing. Otherwise, you'd have this company making brand X and this company making standard Y, and it would just be a nightmare. You wouldn't be able to have TV signals. And then one TV station broadcasts, you can see, it just becomes a not good. The first color broadcast in the U.S. was made in January 1954, and the U.S. was the first country to actually use color television in broadcast. It was on the NTSC color standard, and we use that still today in much of the Americas and in Japan. NTSC is an acronym that stands for National Television System Committee, though I've heard it also expressed National Television Standards Commission. Several years after the U.S. adopted their system, European countries agreed on one of two different systems. European color TV was based, again, on the different electrical frequency of 50 hertz. So they have a frame rate of 25 frames per second. Technologists in France developed the SECAM color standard, S-E-C-A-M, which translated stands for sequential memory. Sequential color through memory. And in Great Britain, they developed and aligned themselves with the system still used and known as the PAL, P-A-L system, phase alternating by line is what the acronym means. Now, I should point out that CCAM is a television broadcast format, still used in France, but it's not a DVD format. DVDs are created using either NTSC or PAL. So if you're in France, you're living in France, you view your DVDs on the PAL color standard, but you watch your broadcast on CCAM. So the TV sets in France kind of have that dual ability. So again, these are the main color standards in use today. NTSC in the Americas, except for Brazil and Japan. CCAM in France, while the rest of the world uses PAL. Here's the takeaway for this. If you're sending your video internationally, and you need to understand then that your projects need to be created in the color standard which your audience will use. Okay? But I should say this. Other countries do have a great number of what we call multi-standard devices that allow playback of a variety of color standards. Now, if you travel to Italy this summer, see the Leaning Tower of Pisa, you can shoot video from your camera. That won't change. That's not affected by this. But if you go to play it back, you connect your TV, you connect your camera to the TV in the hotel, guess what? It's probably not going to play back because it is a PAL television set. Okay? Yeah, very strange. All right, the last thing dealing with these foundations and fundamentals ties directly to this. Even apart from the different color TV standards is something called regional DVD codes. This is essentially a piece of information that's stamped, or more accurately, electronically embedded into a commercially produced DVD that allows it to play only in that region. Planet Earth is divided up into 6 different DVD regions. For example, Region 1 is the USA and Canada. Region 2, Japan, Europe, South Africa, the Middle East, and Greenland, and on and on and on. So what this means is if you're in France or Italy, you can only play commercial DVDs that are stamped for Region 2. So you cannot send your friend in Paris, France, the latest Iron Man movie on DVD when it comes out that you bought in the USA. You can send it, but she won't be able to view it. Okay? Unless she has one of 2 things. A region-free DVD player. These are DVD players that do not honor or use the limits put on by the DVD region codes. You can also purchase DVDs that are encoded as Region 0 or Region All, meaning they'll play in any region. So these DVD region codes, by the way, are only for commercial movies and films. They are not created or stamped when you create your DVDs at home. So if you make DVDs on your computer, your editing system at home, don't worry about the region codes. This is only for commercially produced titles. So here's the takeaway. If you're sending home videos to friends internationally, they should be able to play them. Okay? If they have a multi-color standard TV, your home videos. But when you travel to Australia from the US or Canada and you purchase a DVD showing the Great Barrier Reef, well, make absolutely sure that you pick up a DVD that's labeled NTSC and Region 1. Well, that's it for today's program. A lot of information, but I think, some useful, helpful stuff for you there. Links presented in today's program, along with some summary notes, additional information, will be posted in the show notes. You'll find those on my website at yourtechnologytutor.com/11. yourtechnologytutor.com/11. Next program, we continue talking about video, questions about sharing video, internet video, YouTube, Facebook, and more. Until then, your technology tutor, Chet Davis, signing off. Have a great rest of the day.